Good evening. It's a Sunday night here in Real Love Guitars, and we have one of two ES339s that Ron brought over today, and I'm going to start with the red one. He likes them both, and they're both in for a Real Love Guitars setup, and that's going to be slightly lower action and precision fret level, new custom adjustable nut, Tusq, clean up and check over. Now, one of the things I did already notice on this guitar, which is par for the course of me bringing people bad news of things they hadn't already seen. So straight off the bat, there's this crack here, which is a stress shedding by the looks of it from a bang on the headstock. I would hazard a guess. And there is a corollary version down this side, but that one actually, stab. That one, if we can get a close up look, that one goes sort of off at quite a nifty angle, as you can see. So once I get the strings and everything off, I'm going to have a closer look at it. You know, there's nothing we can do. It's one of those things that it's disappointing for Ron, because he bought this and a seller either didn't notice it or didn't mention it. What I would say is there is a little hint of something going on down here as well, which wouldn't surprise me if it's sort of connected. You see that? A little bit of maybe the binding's coming away or come away and somebody's put some glue on to cover it up or try to keep it together. Nothing big, it's not a big deal. Most of that's grain. Is it grain? Yeah, most of it's grain that you can see. So I'm zoomed up a long way. I've got lost now. Zoomed up a long way, obviously, but you know, it's just little hints. There are probably, you know, it's probably taken a little bonk on the head. There's another curious thing about this, which you will now see about now, which is this. That's a strange buckled little plate, which kind of suggests that the screw's in the wrong place and it's buckled. But anyway, he likes both these guitars. The other one's at home, so we're going to do the setup on these. So I think I'm going to sort of dive in and get started. We may not finish it tonight, because although I'm supposedly in for a late-ish shift, it's quite late anyway, and I could do with some time at home. I'm not complaining. It makes out like I'm working all ridiculous hours, which isn't the case. But we've had or Claire's had a scan today, MRI scan, down at the hospital, just to find out what's going on with her increasing back pain and stuff. She had a bone scan the other week, which we were very relieved wasn't any cancer in the bones, but it's kind of difficult. You know, she's in a lot of pain, but you know, on one hand we're pleased it's not cancer, on the other hand she's in a lot of pain. So there's no real sort of simple way around that. Okay, so I'm going to get my Tusq nut bases out of here, and the new adjustable nut. Now the what you call them, the Epiphones are pretty tall. They're typically tall nuts, and this is made of plastic. So this is one of the things I think lets these down. They're great guitars, but plastic nut isn't a fab thing to have on your ES339. When you know, for a little bit extra. I know everything's made to a profit margin and stuff, but I'm sure they could fit a better nut. But then it's the old story, isn't it? You know, it is stripped down profit margins. So I guess, you know, they'll come back with, look, we can only make it to a certain margin, and if you want, you know, that extra appointment, as they would call it, then you'll need to you know, carry a higher price. Now the great thing about the Epiphone necks is that they build these things properly, as I call it. In other words, they fit, they do all the finish first, then they route a slot in for the nut, and then they put the nut on top of there, and that's that's basically avoids the problem I've been having with cheaper made Chinese made or in Far Eastern made guitars, where they put the nut in first on the bare wood and then they finish around it, and the problem with that is it ends up gluing the nut firmly into the brittle finish, and the nut becomes an unwanted part of the finish. It's okay if you just play the thing, but if you actually want to do change the nut, then you're in trouble, because the first thing that tends to happen is that it breaks and basically splinters all the finish around this point here, which has, whether you're expecting it or not, it puts you in a horrible position, because if you're me, then you end up possibly having to refinish a whole pile of the headstock around the nut slot even further sometimes, or if you don't have the ability to do that, then you kind of condemned to just having to live with it, whether you like it or not, which I think is a pretty crap thing if you just bought this guitar and you're looking forward to upgrading the nut. And why wouldn't you? I mean, it's a pretty conventional thing to do. Okay, so I'm going to put together my Tusq nut adjustable bass combo. Say I've picked the tallest of three that my good friend Gerard made me, and I know already that these tend to fit here pretty much spot on. Now there's a little bit of overhang on this side. The slot isn't quite perfect on this side. It's not bad, but I'll just do a little tiny bit of cleaning up, move a few things. There's some glue crusted up on here, so it's a good idea to start with getting the nut sorted before we go straight into this. It never does to assume anything's going to be easy, because things have a habit of not turning out that way, as you've probably seen a number of times on my videos if you've watched any of them. But in principle it should be straightforward, and particularly doing this on an adjustable nut and set up on a 339, not a 335, should be pretty straightforward. Now it's a fraction wider at the base here, so I'm going to use my sanding blocks just to, first of all, I'm kind of taking any lip off the base part of the nut here. I'm making it nice and flush with the Tusq and the 3D printed plastic. They're going to be nice and flush together. That's what we want to begin with, and in doing so you might just fit it in. I don't really want to, wherever possible I want to avoid kind of cutting into any finish or anything, because that's always where you get problems. This is still a fraction on the thick side, so I'm now going to go to the back side of the nut, and I'm going to just try and put a bit of pressure on the back foot, if you like, just to thin this down just a tiny fraction, so that we get it fitting nicely on the bottom there. It's quite, it's all a bit hit and miss, kind of. So I'm just squaring it off as much as possible, and then I think we're pretty much there. It seems to want to sit there nicely, and I can check on both sides. Yeah. Okay, so the one thing I wanted to do was just to quickly think about this neck break, or crack I should say. Now there's age-old discussions will be had on this type of thing, and you've probably seen those sort of raging discussions, shall we call them, or arguments online. And the question is, what are the implications of this? Now, a lot of people insist, or like to insist, that these kinds of stress cracks are only in the finish. And it's true that the finish is very brittle, and that any stresses in any kind of joints, especially right angle joints, they will tend to kind of express themselves by cracking the finish. However, it doesn't also mean that there isn't some underlying, and in fact I can see right now this is cracked, okay, and I'm able to just gently move it. Don't know how well you can see that. Let's see if I can get you an even closer look. Hold on. Right, everything's got to be very still to see this. which isn't easy to do because, can you see, right, you need to look at this tiny bit right on the edge there. I'm just trying to hold everything as still as possible. See that coming apart? Okay, so that has cracked the wood a little bit, and we'll probably find the same on this side. So that's what I wanted to do really, was have a look at this. I should slack those off a bit more really. And so we're gonna do the same on this side and take a look at that joint there. Yeah, look. See that? No doubt about that. That's cracked. So now that is a bit of a crappy situation because, well, first of all, let me just, in case, well, there's no way that Ron's going to watch this before I speak to him. But if you're thinking, oh no, that's terrible for Ron, the first thing to recognise is that the way this is cracked, it's cracked backwards this way, and it's cracked that way because it's taken a hit probably to this side of the headstock. It's fallen down or banged into a table on its way down or something like that. And what it's obviously done is split here, as you could see. And if the strings were pulling the headstock that way, then I'd be worried because it would be kind of cranking open this gap and it would be unstable. But if you think about it, the headstock is actually being pulled, the crack is being pulled closed by the force of the strings, which is actually a much better situation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look at slacking off the strings for a minute, and then I'm going to have well, first of all, I'm going to get rid of these horrible little stingy string bites, because these are going to hurt me and damage the finish as they go spinning around. We don't want that. So they go straight on the floor to be swept up at a later time. So I wanted to do this one first because of the two, this is the one I spotted the damage on, and I wanted to be able to put this right as much as I can for Ron while I'm doing this, because it's not a big deal. It's going to be the best I can do for it is to get some glue into the crack, and to do that I'll probably need to gently prise the old crack open a little bit. Now that's always a sort of slightly nerve-wracking thing, because your question you have to ask yourself is, well, how open, how much open, and in, you know, where can I prise it open? Well, I can see straight away. I mean, if you were me, you can see exactly where it's come apart. Sorry about this. This is not a very good view, is it? I can't even see what you are seeing. Actually, hold fire. Let's do it this way. Now we'll come up here. So what we're going to look at is there, and because I can't keep this still, but basically you may be able to see, as I sort of put a bit of pressure on it, you may be able to, oh sorry, see see that little line right under the fingerboard, that's where it's cracked, and so it's prising. That was actually coming apart, it's yawing very slightly. Now like I said, this is a non-fatal injury, it's not a big bad thing, so you know, you could play it forever and it wouldn't fall apart. That's a good thing. But because we've got this little bit of room here, it's possible that with something like a very thin blade, we could probably just keep this wedged very slightly open and see if we can squeeze some glue into there. Now the question will be, is what squeezy-ometers have I got? And actually, I happen to have a little syringe here, which is a bit mucky, but it'll do. A syringe, there's no syringe small enough to get into any cracks here, so all I'm going to use this syringe for is to impart a little bit of pressure into the glue to hopefully get it underneath there. So the first thing I'm going to do is have a look at getting some blades up and seeing what we can do to just prop that. You see that? We're getting a nice fit of blade under there without any major hassle at all. This one down this side, same deal. See that? So that's basically opened this up a little bit, and I can see, you can probably see, we can see kind of fresh air. It's a little bit tricky because we don't want to flood the truss rod channel with glue, so obviously we don't want to pump gallons of the stuff in there. There's no real way, when you think that the channel runs just down there in a strip, there's no real way, if we've got a clear space, there's no real way I can stop it going onto the shroud that covers the truss rod. But that's a little bit of a secondary consideration really. What I really want to be able to do is to, I'm going to kind of lever this now with the guitar's weight, so forgive me, it looks a bit extreme, but what I'm going to do is just kind of get these comfortably opened up. Okay, that's about as much as it wants to do there. Okay, so I've got myself a gap and it's the way it's going to be, I'm afraid. So I'm going to try and squirt some glue in the sides here, and then if I can, I will try and perhaps replace this. It's a bit wide. The blade is a little bit wide and it's restricting me getting any glue into that area. So ideally I would like something thinner but a similar thickness to wedge it open. But the only thing I can find is one of these fret protector strips, which I have to say aren't terribly useful in day-to-day life, but trying to think if I can cut something up to, yeah, here's a piece of metal that I've cut up lots of times before, so I'm not precious about it. So I'm going to use this to cut a little strip. These tin snips are so useful. Okay, so this gives me quite a strong, and actually probably about as thick as the blade maybe. So this gives me a little thinner thing, so I can, if I can put something under there instead of this, then I can, if it will go under, then I'll be able to get more. There you go. So if I can just wedge that a little bit, then I can get the glue into this bit here, and then actually it would probably make more sense if I could just wedge it open towards the center like this. Let's check the gap. Yep, and then we can get more glue in this part. There are those who would say that it would make more sense to have the strings completely out of the way right this second, but I think they'll be okay. So the first side, as you can see, actually now see how big that gap is. I'm only expanding it now to get some finish into there. The problem with repairing this is there's two aspects. All I'm really looking to do is I want to glue the wood at the moment. That's my primary concern. Then once that's glued, then I think we need to think about what we do to disguise or fill any irregularity. Now, Glu Boost Fill and Finish is a pretty good material for that. So I think we won't worry about the finish part of things just as yet. We'll concentrate on the glue part of things. Now the thing about glue is we could clamp it, but we might as well just put the nut on with the strings and let the strings pull it all together as it would sit in normal use. So I don't know how much you can see here. Okay, so if I zoom in, or try and zoom in, you can see quite clearly now that gap. And if I bring you overhead of it, see that? That's just exaggerated what's already there. So, with my not very scientific squirty thing, I'm going to start by just going down here and trying to hold it as close to the edge as possible and squirt in. Now, of course, it's going to result in a ton of spill because it's not a very scientific method, all right? So I'm naturally wiping that out there. So you can see straight away there's quite a bit of glue sitting in that gap, and it's come out the nut end, which is fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this if I can. Yep. Clean that up. Now you can see, well, you may be able to see straight away, that's squelched that out the side, which is good. I'm not going to do anything just yet. What I will now try and do is use the same piece of metal over here. Just get it in here enough to get some glue and squeeze it in this side as well, with the strings getting right in my way, but I'm just being lazy because I don't want to take them off and rethread them, frankly. I have just sliced open a cut I made yesterday. That's going to probably bleed. That was a chisel cut. Anyway, it's not bleeding for a minute. That's very cool. Thank you. Right, a bit more of the old tissue paper here. So again, I'm going to place that on there and just hope to squeeze a bit in. It does get very messy because it's impossible to take the pressure off it quickly and clean up. But again, you can see that right there I've got some glue going into there, and I'll try a bit more here and here and here as much as I can, controlling the squelch a bit better. And it isn't so bad. That goes as far into there as you can. Oh, hellfire. I'm sorry, I've made this disappear again. You can probably see where the glue's gone in. Right, now it's not wonderful. I have no idea how far that penetrates into there, but what I'm going to do now is reset you to there. I'm going to graciously remove that, let the thing shut down on itself, and right for now I'm going to allow, well, I'll take a little bit of the glue off. I don't really mind if this nut gets a little bit of glue on it, to be honest, as long as it stays in place. So I'm going to put the there it is. I'm going to tighten up the G first to hold this nut in place. Or maybe wiggle a bit until I get the D on. There's the D. And this has got a bit of glue on it, so we'll just clean that so it doesn't totally ruin how it sounds. We're going to replace the strings, obviously, but this is just to make sure that what we're putting on now still sort of works for the time being while we're using them for the setup purposes. They might as well retain their string-like capabilities as much as possible, because it will come in handy. Okay, so I'm going to put this under load. Now the first thing to say is we'll probably get some glue squirting out the sides, which isn't such a bad thing. So I'm just going to gently mop up the obvious stuff. And the other thing to say is, where does it go? Why is it? Why? Right, there it is. I'm going to now very quickly raise up the strings to give them the ideal first fret action before we start. Now I'm going to get the tuner and put them under a basic tuning. Now this action is now hair breadth low, so I'm just going to tweak it a tiny bit more to kick off with, and then I would comfortably leave that now with the glue. And just wipe this little excess bit out there. I think there's a tiny bit inside of there which we can't get inside a little lacquer break, but that's okay. So when it comes to the repairing or filling this lacquer, well, we can do that a little bit later, so that's okay, and that's okay. Again, just tiny bit of overspill, but it comes off really easily. So I think that's the best we can do as far as the gluing is concerned. I'm just going to replace my leftover glue and stick some water in this. Squirt. Oops. squirt. Okay, that's fine for now. Yeah, so we'll leave this dry overnight and we'll worry about seeing if we can do any finish tweaks tomorrow or the following day, but tomorrow will be good. And I just think possibly a little bit of cherry finish and some Glu Boost over the top of it, I think will be about the best thing we can do, which isn't a bad outcome actually. It will be, considering what we started with, it will be good. And again, you know, like I said, it's a bit disappointing for Ron, because, you know, he didn't expect to, well, he didn't know there was a problem, because the owner or the seller either didn't know or knew but didn't say. So there's always a little bit of a funny taste in the mouth. And I was explaining to him today, one of the difficult things is that I can't help being somehow involved in that, because I'm the good guy who goes and points it out, which, although it's clearly not my fault, in inverted commas, I still get tainted with a bad taste by sort of just by association, really. It's hard to avoid it. Okay, so that's about where I want it. Let's get it back into tune. So, like I said, the strings pulling the headstock this way will always kind of self-seal that break, so it's not a bad problem. So what I've done is I've set the action, dropped it about 1 millimeter on the bass side, down to 1.5 on the low E, high last fret, and 1.2. It was kind of almost there on the high string, the high E. So it's got very, very low first fret action. And the thing I said to Ron earlier on is that the first thing that you feel is how easy it becomes to play it down at this end. Not bad. A little bit of zinging out there. Very, very good all round. It's got some wear on it down here that I said if we do a light fret leveling, then we'll get rid of that wear as well. So that's one of the benefits. If everything was perfect, I probably wouldn't just recommend fret leveling, just to remove a small amount of kind of grooves from the quote-unquote cowboy chords, as people like to call them in a derogatory, insulting fashion. But down you go. But you know, so if there's a tiny bit of zizzing on the frets on high bends as well, then it's not a bad thing to do. What I'll also want to do is check things like the jack socket, make sure that's nice and secure, and check the electrics as well. Okay, so just looking at this right now, repair glued, we'll do a little fill tomorrow and the sand back, and that will be a smooth finish. Probably be able to buff it out as well, just to kind of hide it, or you know, make it so it certainly doesn't feel like anything. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the opportunity to mark up the frets. One of the things we were talking about today when Ron brought these over was, you know, just how important it is that you end up with a guitar that stays in tune. And I kind of showed him my pre-loved guitars, Oakcaster 16, the headless one of my first headless one actually. And although it's the older sort of body shape design, not the Trekkie ones that I do now, I really I can't fault it. It's got rail hammer pickups, and it has the most stable tuning of any guitar I've kind of ever had. There's a big chip on this one that really needs leveling out, which would be good. Anyway, yeah. So you know, I said, yeah, I absolutely know about it. You know, having a guitar that stays in tune throughout a whole gig is just amazing. But you know, one of the things I always reiterate, and I know that Ron will have seen my videos and heard me blather on about it numerous times, and the thing I always go a big deal on is I could really do with bending over and picking that up, is the fact that the two key components in tuning stability are your nut, and that's why I use the Tusq adjustable nut. So the height, perfect first fret action, perfectly smooth, self-lubricated Tusq slots set at the right height. That's why I do what I do. So half of the equation is getting that part right, and the other half is stretching out the slack in your strings. Now I bet you this is now out of tune again. Wow. Okay, you know, so the thing is with these strings, I know I've taken them off and put them back on, but even when I first played this guitar earlier on, it was going out of tune very quickly. And so well, typical example, you know, somebody's been playing these strings for a while, I'll get hold of them, I'll do this, and then, you know, if I can make them go out of tune now, then your guitar is going to go out of tune every time you play it. Okay, so now what I've done is just got it up to tune, and now we're going to do a fret level with the U-channel rod, which I'm more and more sticking to these days, mainly because since I've kind of learned of its added advantage in the way it, because it's so stiff, it's able to tackle the phenomenon that I call fret slap, as well as taking out uneven or evening out uneven frets. Can you see it? Yes, you can. Same old view. I know it's boring, but unless I had an assistant and a camera, or you know, fly around, follow the suspect drone type of thing, which I don't have, and it's going to be like this. Anyway, so I'm going to just get stuck straight in, and remember, I know what my challenge is. Very good, generally good frets, fairly low, I mean not new, a little bit of fret wear down here with a couple of little notches that need ideally want taking out, and then a little bit of zing up here in the high E bends. Now I'm kind of first of all going to do a little bit of leveling out and look what I'm seeing. So straight away, let's show you. Oh, my wrist hurts. Let's fly you in. So it's never, maybe that's good, you can see from there. Cutting there, a little bit there, none there, tiny bit there, none, some, a bit more, none. So we've got two. Now this is really interesting. Let's draw this, right? Because unless I kind of looked at it this way, it would be hard to imagine that this is in fact what's going on. So that's telling me right now, providing I've calibrated this rod correctly, it's telling me that we've got it's sort of going like this, down a bit, up a bit, down a bit, in fact staying down, right? So that's kind of what it's telling me the shape of the neck is, and I'm seeing it as cutting here, no cutting there, no cutting, so nothing there, and nothing there. And in fact, there's more not cutting than there is cutting. So that sort of tells me, I'm so sorry, what a rubbish cameraman. That tells me, okay, cutting there, no cutting at all, down the valley, up the top of the hill cutting, down the valley, no cutting, it's right to the end. And there's more low at the moment than there is at the top being cut with the fret leveling tool. Now, I know from experience that if it could be that I've calibrated this completely wrong, and when you see a result like that, it's always a good idea to recalibrate. So, you know, if you're not getting all the frets touching. Oh, I'm so stupid. You know, the one thing I didn't, oh God, forgive me, I didn't check was the relief. Well, the relief is okay. I knew it because I played it a bit earlier on and looked then, but apologies, I didn't check that as a start point. It's quite flat, and so I'm going to recalibrate. I'm going to put the string back in. I'm going to recalibrate, and just to convince myself and you that across the 3 sample points that I work from, and my U-channel fairly stiff truss rod, which is very good at mapping the curve, I'm now looking, okay, I'm a fraction flat, so I'm going to add the tiniest amount of curvature to it, which is just about spot on there, and I'm going to just give it another go, and if that then is just curved enough to dip into those little troughs, then that might just touch the top of those frets, but I'm not sure because it's an interesting pattern that it's here, it's cutting here and here but not there. So just going to let it cut again under its own, under gravity really, and then we'll just have another quick look. Now what happens is when you find these little valleys and hills and stuff, I draw it out dramatically, but actually it's nowhere near as dramatic as that. It's a very tiny amount. So I'm now starting to touch these, touch that one a little bit, touching that one, touching that one, that one, that one, that one, touching that one. And the final one. There's a little cluster at the end here that's low, and maybe one here that's low now that's revealing themselves. But that still tells me I've got that little dip here and a little dip right at the end, which is always interesting to see. Now at this point you have to say to yourself, well, how much do I continue leveling till I cut everything? If you were using a conventional radius block or quite a wide but flat sanding beam, and you had your neck off the guitar flattened, and you were just kind of scraping across the top of the frets, then you'd end up probably going until you cut all of them, and then you'd stop. Now the reason I like this method is because right now I've cut here, here and here, here, here and here. That one's tiny bit low, and then I've got a patch of low ones which is actually 6 frets right at the end here. Now they still appear low. Now the thing about low frets at the end, of course, is they're not quite as annoying or problematic as low frets. If they're all low at the end, it could be that somebody in the past has put a fall away onto the fingerboard, which is not uncommon. It's not uncommon that they would have done that in somebody doing a previous job on it. Now, however, I'm hearing a little bit of a zing up there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat a little bit now, and I'm going to use this end of the truss rod a little bit more, and just press it down a little bit to see if I can pick up and tame this cluster of last frets. Now, in a way, that's cheating the system a little bit because I'm now kind of ignoring down here, but it's so far away that it doesn't have a direct impact on it. So I think we'd probably be just about there with this leveling. Okay, good. So I'm now going to do the second track, the B track, which I'm going to start with the same calibration as the E track. I'll change on the G track. Now, here I am kind of again using the rod as much as possible lightly to begin with, just to see what it's going to tell us about the condition of the neck. And it's confirming that one's low, and it's confirming we've got a bunch of low ones up here, which is nothing we didn't see in the first or in the E track, so it's reconfirming what we know. So again, it's The great thing about this method of leveling a little bit flat note, a flat fret at the top there, which is causing that little bit of a but yeah, I was going to say, I forgot what I was going to say now. Yes, the really good thing about this method is that because the strings are on, it allows me to level until the point where I've got the playing action that I want out of it, and then stop. So I don't need all of the frets to be cut. I don't need them all to be shining. I need them to play at the action I've set. Not bad. That's good. Already the sort of singing is alleviated. So now I'm going to recalibrate for the G track. And those of you who like things like maths, I'm not a maths person. I mean, I'm fascinated by it, but I've never been any good at it technically. But I'm fascinated by science and principles of maths and stuff. It doesn't stop it exciting me, even if I'm not very good at doing it on paper. But what I love about this method is that those of you who know maths and digital stuff, and you can tell that what I'm doing is I'm sampling the curvature of this neck in 3 points. And actually, you could say, oh, but that's very inaccurate, right? Which is exactly right. It's a very gross sampling, a very limited sampling of a neck that you could argue straight away would be far more nuanced than my 3 sample points could copy, right? And that's definitely the case. But there's a real advantage in it sampling it that crudely. I'm happy. That's all good. Yeah, the real advantage is, and this is where the thing I've learned over the years. I don't know how my battery's holding up, but it's probably going to conk out shortly. So what I learned over years is that when you have a neck under compression by the strings, the truth about the neck is that under compression it's kind of like this. It sort of follows a curve, but it isn't anything like dead smooth. But because we sample it at 3 points, maybe that's one, and then maybe that's the other, and this is extreme, isn't it? But maybe that's the other one. And so I sample at 3 points, and the truss rod in reality bends a lot more smoothly. Make that bigger just for fun. All right, it bends a lot more smoothly than the actual neck that I'm going to use it on. So it follows that as I put this, I call this the idealized curve, because the truss rod gives me an ideal curve, and the real curve is bumpy and imperfect, right? But once we've calibrated with these 3 points, our truss rod gives us a kind of an idealized curve, which is actually straighter and smoother in its curve than the real underlying curve that I took those 3 points from. And you can start to see that as I bring this down onto here, it's going to tackle that, probably a bit of 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 that as it does it. Now that isn't taking care of uneven frets. An uneven fret is something that sticks out here, and yes, of course, the truss rod tool does take it down. The real interesting point for me is when the truss rod tool, the banana tool, in gently just scooping its ideal curve onto the less than ideal real bumpy fingerboard, what it does is by taking these down, it clears, or it kind of straightens it out just that little bit, and it creates a little bit of extra space for the strings when they're spinning. And I found that truss rod, that method, using particularly the StewMac U-channel truss rod, I've found that actually not only does it level frets, which is of course what I want it to do in the first obvious instance, but the next thing it does is it takes away fret slap caused simply by the strings currently being too low over an imperfect bumpy fingerboard. And so what that means is in reality that the imperfections are taking away the clearance that the strings need. So this second function of this banana truss rod, I call it, is to just map its or impose its gentle ideal curve onto the imperfect bumpy curve of the neck, and in doing so it remarkably well just you can hear it if you've got fret slap due to the strings sort of spinning and hitting the clipping the tops of some of the frets, the uneven or the the bumpy parts of the curve. You can actually hear this tool reducing that as you work it, and I just think that's a fantastic secondary benefit. And it took me probably about 6 years to work that out. That's perfect, except for 2 frets there. Got a little bit of what I would call fret slap up there, and you might go, well, how the hell do you know the difference between fret buzz and fret slap? And these are my terms. I've just invented them to make my life easier, and so I know what I'm talking about. But the fret buzz, if you accept my working description of it, the definition, fret buzz I call when an individual fret is either too high or too low, and a high fret obviously gets in the way of the string spinning and causes buzz in one particular spot. It's usually on one fret, or is caused by, you get fret buzz when a fret is low, and that by definition makes the next fret behave as if it's unusually high, and you get the buzzing. But it's again only in one spot, and it's due to that fret being too low. In the first case, you level to bring down the high frets. In the second case, you level to bottom out all the other frets down to the level of the low fret. Now that sounds pretty dramatic, but actually in reality it's only barely a few thousandths of an inch. So it really does work. I've never yet had so low a fret that I've had to pull it out. A little bit of fret slap hit in different places here. So that's because this is a very low action and it's a very flat neck. So we're really pushing this, and I said to Ron earlier on that that's what I prefer to do. I prefer to push to the, get the frets as good as they can be for the lowest feasible action that you might want. Now, of course, we can add a bit of relief, or we can raise the bridge action a tiny fraction and change things around, and then we won't, we can get rid of that buzz just like that. But I like to do my best to get it to that perfect sort of playing condition, get rid of the fret slap if we can before having to compromise and raise the action. It's not a defeat as in a compromise as in a defeat, because we are setting it very, very low at the moment. So cleaner. There you go. That's got rid of the fret slap. Brilliant. Final calibration for the low E track, and then we'll be done in the fret leveling. And I think maybe I will do the recrowning and then pause for the night. No, I won't do the recrowning. I'm going to leave the strings on. So that will be my plan. I will pause, leaving the strings on to keep the neck. So I'll kind of leave a bit for tomorrow, which is okay. I originally had hoped to do this one, finish this one tonight, and do the other one tomorrow, but I've got a couple of days, so it's not under massive rush. I think we've agreed that Ron will come over for them on Thursday. Probably could be before, but I never like to put myself under too much time pressure unless something comes up and I have to tackle it. So I'm bearing in mind, as I'm doing this leveling on the low E, I'm bearing in mind that it's good to touch most of the frets if possible, because we've got those little dents to get rid of. Now some of them have dents, but they're a little bit low, a tiny low spot here, one there, and so on. And my judgment would be, will I keep on leveling just to get rid of the fret grooves? The answer is no. Now this is very low, so it could be struggling to play it. What is this? Yeah, 1.4. It's under 1.5. I'll calibrate one more time and then just gently let the banana tool do its thing. Like last time, you remember I said there was a tiny bit of fret slap. Let's let it do its thing. According to this, it's hard to say exactly, but that's possibly looking a little overbent. Too much. The amount of adjustment is minuscule. It's one of the things you've got to get used to when you use this method. The adjustments are tiny. Tiny. Trial and error. Okay, that's where it's right. Okay, so now on this run, I'm going to aim to let this. So I'm not thinking about on this run because I'm dealing with fret slap now. This is psychological. I turn it round. Right? It's only psychological because what I'm doing is I want this just to impose its curvature as is without bending it or stressing it. I just want it to gently impose this curvature onto the frets right now, the way it currently is set in this truss rod, or the banana as I call it. So I'm just trying to use as little downward force as possible. I'm doing a bit of sideways pushing here, but as little downward as possible. And because I really want the original curve that we've just dialed in to be going up and down, up and down. So lots of repetition, but very little downward pressure. I think we'll be there. One there. That one. Number 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And it's showing up as flat, low. So I'm going to do a little bit of extra help at that end on 18. And that is, I'm going to physically now press down at this end. And I'm just aiming to put a little bit more effort into this crop of frets because I know there's a low one amongst them, and I really do want to some degree bottom that out and free up that low one so that it doesn't cause that little bit of tiny bit of buzz. And it's all, you know, in service of as low an action as possible. Okay. Now you notice that even that's detuned. That's going to be it for tonight. I'm going to leave it right there, let the glue set, and then we'll finish the setup tomorrow and then concentrate on the maybe doing a little bit of touch-up work on those little bits. And the thing is, you know, with these little things here, you could just sand that now and make it smooth, and you wouldn't feel anything. But you know, there's a little bit of cherry missing, which I'd like to just touch up there, and then maybe put a little bit of Glu Boost over it and sand that back so it's just lovely and smooth. I'd rather, you know, most of all it needs to feel smooth. Spot repairs on something like this aren't easy to do, and you can spend hours trying to do it, and I'm not charging for that, so I'm not gonna kind of do a kind of expensive refinish job on something when that's not what I've been asked to do. So I'm going to do the best I can just to improve it, as kind of within what I'm doing, because it's not a big deal. Okay, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow when we finish this. Okay, next day. Polished, leveled, recrowned, sanded, polished out, everything cleaned, ready to go. Bits refitted. But last little detail over here, I have heated and cooled the thingy here, which was completely buckled, so now we've got a flatter looking thing. It's not perfect because it's got a little bit of a crimp impression from the we'll call it, the thing, but it's flat, so it's not buckled. There we are. It's just one of those things. It's a bit difficult to control the heat. So how do you get it not to pick up any impression of the thing you're clamping it with? If I had a think, I would have gone back and maybe put something else in there, a little bit flatter than I thought. The plywood was pretty flat, but it's not as flat as I could have liked. Anyway, it should be a little flatter all round than it was. It still wants to return to a bit of a bend. That's quite funny, but it's a better shape than before anyway. Before it was a complete hump. Right, okay, so now we have the fun part of stringing. I'm going to leave you focused in there close up. So we're going to go with 10s, which is what are on both of these guitars. So I'm going to thread them through from the bottom end up to, well, I'll just thread them all through for a minute up to towards the top end, and we'll kind of park them up there. So just hold fire. So 2nd of August 2021, kind of big day in sort of personal stuff in a way. It's the day that my eldest son has come back to the UK from Denmark. It's not a happy day in that he was out there for the last couple of years with his girlfriend, and they were a very serious item, and he was going to stay out there forever, and he did great. He went to a completely different country, didn't speak the language, learned pretty some good language skills pretty quickly, and settled in and carried on working for a UK company and organised all the complex tax stuff that you have to do to do that, and managed to do it despite the Brexit implications and stuff. So he was somehow, I think he got it kind of organised beforehand, so there weren't too many issues. But as things do, the relationship part of it just recently didn't work out, so he really had to kind of make a tough decision to pull out, and no puns and jokes there, but head back. So he's going to be heading for his mum and stepdad's place to begin with, and I'm hoping to see him pretty soon. But he's going to be feeling kind of down for a while, so bless him. I hope he sort of picks up, his spirits pick up before too long. Okay, but I'm very proud of him for having done it and having been so self-motivated. He's been a go-getter in a way since he left school, and I really like that about him, that I think I might have mentioned this in the video before, but one of the things I really do like is that he's taken my advice on occasions where it's done him some real good, and I've really liked that aspect. So his first ever job, proper job, he went for an interview, and he didn't really know much about the company, and we sort of got into a thing where we kind of researched it together just before he went in for the interview, and he got really interested in what the company was doing, and basically sort of came up with some really great questions, which at the time they were very impressed with. In fact, they had said at the time he was the only candidate that day that had asked intelligent interested sounding questions, and I'm really kind of proud of that quality in him, and he knows how to do that now and is able to do it. So, you know, we're all biased about our own kids, but it's great to be able to sort of know a real strength they have, you know, and because when you sort of see it, you can support it as well. So it's going to be a difficult little period, I think, and I'm going to hope that he sort of, when he's ready to emerge into the world, that he comes out. Wow, that string literally went flying. Yeah, just hopefully he comes out ready to find something else interesting in the world. I mean, he's still got the job. There's no problem with that. So, but you know, you never know. It might be one of those times where people often, when relationships end, often, you know, people feel like reinventing themselves. So you never know. Maybe he'll come up with something bizarre. Off camera, I just have to say, we had a difficult thing. The power kept going on and off up here at the workshops shortly after I arrived tonight. So I've done as much as I could off camera, if you like, including the polishing out, or the crowning bit I did off camera unusually, including the polishing out and all of that stuff, because I thought I'd better do it before it gets dark if I'm not going to have any power back, so at least to get something done tonight. Anyway, as it happens, that was okay because the power came back on. And with the lights on, I also did the kind of little touch-up repairs. Now, they're not perfect, but they're not bad at all. Little touch-up repairs to the finish cracks. You can still see the cracks. It wasn't my intention to invisible them, because it's not really possible. My intention was to fill them and smooth them out, which I've been able to do, and I'm kind of very happy with how that's gone. So, and that's a sort of, for me, that's a complimentary thing, as a thank you to Ron for bringing 2 guitars at once, because it's when somebody, you know, takes not the risk exactly, but when somebody drives down and brings guitars to me, all the way from wherever they live, and you know, often they're on a, you know, a break down here anyway, but you know, to bring me 2 guitars to set up, you know, I appreciate the business. So if I can do a little bit extra that I don't charge for, I'm very pleased to be able to do that. And these little repairs, or the gluing and the stabilising of the neck, and then the little finish touch-ups are that kind of job that I like to be able to do. I've had a good play of the other ES339 this morning, and there's nothing I can see wrong with that in a similar fashion, but for example, there is definitely a loose jack socket, you know, a couple of little things like that, which I'll be happy to, you know, pleased to be able to put right and tighten up. And I was also able to, you know, play it through and check all the electrics and stuff. Right. So there's my restring. Pretty close to where we want to be right now. So let's shut the packaging away. Okay, so at this stage, what I tend to do, I changed the view, not very exciting view, but hey, at this stage what I like to do is to grab hold of the strings and just give them the first pull to kind of bed them in wherever they're. Sometimes you get a little bit of string pressing against another bit of the loop and so on. So this kind of pull can get them bedded in to begin with, and then I want to get ready to tune it up a little bit. Now, where did I put the tuning fork? Now, the nut should be the same, but I've changed the bridge height because I took it off. Right, Yeah, this is maybe a bit too low right now. Let's have a look. Yes. So anyway, I'm glad my boy is home in one piece. That's the main thing, and I look forward to seeing him soon. Get the spare room ready, and you know, it'd just be nice to go and have some quality time with him, because it's very difficult to do when they're overseas. Even if you can zoom and do all that stuff, you know, it's never the same. Okay, so I've just adjusted the height to where I want it to be, 1.5 and about 1.3, something like that, and okay. Okay, let's just adjust again, do the double checks. We'll go as low as it will go, because we have done some good leveling here, so it should take it. So I'm just going to leave it as nice as it can be. That isn't bad at all. Then we'll adjust. We'll just look at the other end here and see what we've got. And the great thing about the adjustable nut is, with the lights right, you can take it down as far as you like, and just kind of leave it there. And if you think that's a bit too low, you can bring it back up. Now I'm feeling the repairs here, and I can't feel them at all, which is exactly what I want. So I'm very pleased with that. So the thing to do now is I'll just intonate first, and then I will do the stretching. I'm going to do the other ES339 tonight. I'm aiming to do all of it because it should be straightforward. The one thing I noticed about the other Ron's other 339, I didn't notice quite so much on this one, but on the other one, the tuning was completely unstable, and it was tons of slack in the strings, which were kind of messing things up quite a bit. This is hard to do. Right. I'm hoping these will be nicely on. Wrong key. Yeah, so the Tobacco Sunburst one really had loads of slack, and I can't stress it enough that the stretching you have to do to get tuning stability is way beyond what you would normally consider doing when you restring. Yeah, this is all on nicely set. So it makes my life a little bit easier. Now that one, okay, that one's looking a bit too long. Not bad. Fraction long. I think this one, the E, is where it's actually on. It's lucky because there's no further adjustment room possible. So I think that one's a fraction long, and I can see why. It actually looks like it, weirdly enough. So I'm just going to bring the A back to me a little bit. Sort of divide the distance equally. That should be right. Okay, so the stretching business, as I've mentioned before, you might think you've got it in tune, right? But if I can now pull this and detune it at all, then we haven't stretched all the slack. And it's annoying because, you know, most people just want to get on and play, but if you don't do this bit to its extremes, you will continue having to pull out the slack, or it will continue to kind of find its way out. There we go. So I'm not done. So really we have to just keep on. Okay, so that's not far to go to tune it up. So what I tend to do is I tend to push and pull thumb and forefinger, and all the way up and down, even behind the nut if you can. Give it a little stretch there. So it's all about getting as much of the slack out. Now if your nut is a load of rubbish, plastic, deep slots that drag on the strings and so on, actually it kind of, even if you do all of the stretching, you'll still be out of tune all the time, because the nut then holds the strings in different pressures or different tensions either side of the nut, and you will never get it to stay in tune. But this is to say that if you fix one half of the equation, the nut, then you must also stretch out the slack, and when you've done that, you've taken care of both parts. Nearly there. But as you could hear, the bass strings are holding kind of the most slack in them, and it's quite common because they've got the windings and so on. So you might find that they will continue to go out of tune as you pull with your thumbs and forefingers, but eventually you'll get there. So this is about the second or third time. You might want to do this 3 or 4 times, along with some big bends and some pulling, you know, and you have to have the discipline to do it until it stops detuning. And of course it takes the confidence to do it and not break the E string. Very close. So I wanted to be able to show Ron just how stable this tuning is, because you know, with you know, I've taken care of the nut side of the deal, if you like, with fitting the Tusq adjustable, the Relove Guitars custom Tusq adjustable. That's now taken care of. But I wanted to then demonstrate just how stable the tuning could be as long as we get the stretching part done, and I think that's a really good demonstration. So you know, what I hope that Ron finds is that this now stays in tune so well that it's just, you know, a go-to guitar. But the trouble is the other one will too, and that will be also a go-to guitar. Right, so I'm going to switch the video off, and in a kind of magical split second I'm going to be back with the next one.